Esteemed speakers and distinguished participants, Green Crescent has been leading the struggle against addictions that threaten our future for over a century. In the name of eating good and healthy habits, Green Crescent has continued its intervention and prevention efforts with the utmost devotion in the national and international community. Green Crescent continues to get ahead of the negative consequences of digital addictions on people's lives through organizing International Congress of Technology Addiction since 2012. Besides its prevention efforts, especially geared towards children and youth, the Green Crescent continues to carry out effective and widespread efforts against technology addiction with the interventionist practices implemented at its total of 101 Green Crescent counseling centers in Turkey's 81 province and the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Welcome to the second day of the 5th International Congress of Technology Addiction, hosted by Green Crescent, held in cooperation with the Culture, Family and the Society Foundation and sponsored by NTV Press. On the first day of the 5th International Congress of Technology Addiction, we listened to presentations by our valued speakers on themes such as digital gaming, online gambling, COVID-19 addictive behaviors, and excessive use of social media. We became aware of the current updates on the specific aspects of technology addiction. As yesterday, our valuable guests and leading experts in their field will continue to be with you at our Congress today. Dear participants, your question will be passed on to the keynote speakers upon the conclusion of each presentation speech. Each keynote speaker will have 45 minutes allotted to them, about 40 minutes in which to present and 5 minutes to answer your questions. I would like to remind you to submit your questions through Q&A right before the speaker's presentation time is up. The technical team and I will follow up your questions and direct them to the speakers to answer within the 5 minutes. And now I would like to announce our first keynote speaker. Our first keynote speaker is Professor Hae-Kuk Lee, joining us from South Korea, works at the Catholic University of Korea and the Ujambu St. Mary's Hospital. He will give a presentation titled COVID-19 and Excessive Digital Use, Current Situation and Prevention Strategy. I would like to give the floor to Professor Hae-Kuk Lee. Without further extending my words, the floor is yours, Professor Hae-Kuk Lee.
Thanks, Chairman, for introducing me. I'd like to say that it's very honor for me to have a chance to give a keynote presentation, such a very meaningful and honorable symposium held in Turkey, especially friendship country of Korea. My title of the presentation is COVID-19 Pandemic and Addictive Behavior. Subtitle is Current Status and Prevention Strategy. I can start with the slide about the characteristics of infectious disease and thorough quarantine. The strong fear from the characteristics of infectious disease, like invisible and fatal and popular, everyone can infect it. And furthermore, the strong stress from the thorough quarantine. Thinking about if one is confirmed to be diagnosis, a lot of people to have a concern to cause harm and loss and to be stigmatized and also to be criticized. It provokes very stressful psychological distress. And the strong quarantine have a social distancing, and I can say that the social distancing can increase the risk of addiction. That is, the social distancing people may be isolated and separated. And during this kind of social distancing, there were increase of anxiety and depression, and there were difficulties in treatment seeking. Also, there were increase of urge to seek pleasure to escape negative emotion. And reaction to this kind of social distancing, a lot of society have a transformation from untact to untact. This kind of transformation of untact make pleasure-seeking behavior are converging to digital world, and the risk of digital and behavior addiction is increased and so forth. And this slide, I can show you and I can share the knowledge about the why and what is the stress. Thinking about the stress is when are we feel the strong stress? When we are unable to do what we want to do, and when we are unable to avoid what we don't want to do, this kind of quarantine. And during the quarantine, there are a limit of the immediate reward for safety, like distancing, close relationship. And during quarantine, we need to pursue to delay reward for the future safety. And there are less increased concern of happening of bad situation and decreased expectation of happening of good things. Finally, there might be a storage of negative emotion and the depletion of positive emotion. This is a kind of chronicle of the stress response due to the strong quarantine and infectious disease pandemic status. So this kind of very strong stress provoke a survival response in our body and physiology and psychology. We know that there are survival response to stress is, we can say the 3F, freeze, fight, and flight. The freeze, like I can say that it's kind of depression. So a lot of people say that depression during the COVID-19 pandemic, the corona blue. And second survival response is, I can say, the fight. It's kind of anger bursting out. So I can say that the corona red is kind of, it means that anger response during the corona pandemic. And next, corona black. I can say the corona black. It's kind of, I can say the corona survival response is kind of flight. Flight means that the escape from stress to escape from the stressful situation. So I can say it's kind of addiction. So I can say that corona black response is kind of addiction. In this slide, I can show you the example of stress and health consequences, like importance of psychological distress. You know, in San Diego, there were a last very huge earthquake disaster. This graph showed how death rate is changed during this kind of earthquake disaster. You can find the January 1994, the peak of the death rate. But this death rate is not because of the collapse, but because of the cardiac death due to the very huge psychological distress. So I can say that the disaster caused a lot of huge psychological distress, is more harmful than the physical direct risk. From this slide, I can show you how the people's psychology changed according to the time goes by. This investigation was serially conducted by Korean Academy of Trauma and Stress. Sorry. The first one is fear and anxiety. You can show the you can see the degree of fear and anxiety is overall decrease as time goes by. And second one is depression. You can see the degree of depression is continuously increasing, and 6 times higher than 2018 before pandemic, more than 2 times higher among 20s and 30s than in 60s, and higher among female, especially among 30s. The third one is the suicidal ideation. It's very terrible situation. 3.5 times higher than 2018 before the corona pandemic, more than 2 times higher among 20s and 30s than 50s and 60s, higher among male, especially in 20s and 30s. And also higher among 20s, 30s is female. First one is a degree of disturbance like job and social and family status. Now you can see the lowest among investigation period like this and this, but highest in social, leisure, and relatively low in family and job. So I can summarize the implication of COVID-19 and mental health survey result. Fear of infection and discomfort with quarantine has decreased considerably, adapted to the inconvenience of daily life due to quarantine. However, due to restricted social and leisure activities and economic activities, lack of opportunities for happiness and job, and high depression and suicidal thought in 20s and 30s. And the dailization and chronicization and sticking of depression are on the way. And if left unchecked, we will face a risk of higher suicidal rate. So furthermore, I can summarize the result of social distancing. I can say that without preparation, treat from pleasure by close social relationship and friendship. And we should return to the home and stay with family, but lacked in community, familiar, personal resource to substitute the social emotional reward. So there were risk of familial conflict because of the shortage of preparation for social distancing and closing family relationship. An increase of pleasure-seeking behavior on online digital space, or mobilization of easy, accessible external pleasure source, somewhat highly addictive and risky. This risk is happening more, especially vulnerable generation like adolescent and early adulthood. From this slide, I would like to show the Korean survey on COVID-19 and addictive behaviors. This survey was conducted in 2020 May. It's kind of right after the corona pandemic in Korea. The total sample number is over 1,000. And the first one is smartphone use. And changes in smartphone use during COVID-19 pandemic was questioned. The rate of decrease is 4.1%. The rate of increase is 44.3%. And high rate of increase among all age group, you can see. And you can find the pattern of change and most used content. The highest rate of respondent increase among 2 and 3 hours usage group, like this one. And most used content is chatting and news and SNS, like this kind of content. Among a lot of content, and chatting, SNS, and news, and shopping show the increase. And changes in overall online game uses. The rate of decrease is 16.3%, and increased respondent is 24.4%. So I can say that overall increase. And rate of increase was highest among 20s expected. 20s and 30s. And this is for the online game spending. Decrease and increase is almost the same, but among 20s, the rate of respondent increased higher than decreased. And the rate of respondent increase is higher among the user whose usual spending around 10 baht and 60 baht. So I can say that the people who spend much money in usual time, they have a tendency to spend more time during pandemic. This is for the gambling behavior. I can say the overall decreased, but people who have been enjoying gamble more than one time a week, and more than 2 times a week, slightly increased the gambling usage time. Also, the rate of respondent using gamble more than one time has increased. So I can say that the people who use gambling much more time in usual time, they have a tendency to use gambling much more in COVID pandemic. And this is for the watching pornography. Usually, the overall adult content viewing status by age is slightly decreased as age is older, but in 20s, the percentage of the pornography watcher is increasing, you can find. And also the rate of respondent using porno more than 3 or 4 times a month has increased like this. So I can say that regarding the gamble or porno, you can find that the people who use this kind of risky content usually during Corona pandemic, they have a tendency to use more. This is for the mental health effect on digital addictive behavior. Regarding the changes in online game user, among the depression and anxious and have more insomnia, they show the more tendency of the increase of the game use. Also, the people who show depression, anxiety, they show the more increase of smartphone use. And regarding the pornography, the people who are anxious they show the increase of the pornography use. So I can say that the people who have a mental and psychological problem, they have a tendency to use more high-risk content in digital behavior, like self-medication, to escape the psychological distress. The next one is I would like to show the online learning and adolescent media use. The order to close school due to Corona pandemic affects 3.65 million children worldwide. As children spend more time at home, they are more likely to be exposed to online risk, which can lead to child sexual exploitation and contact with extreme content, sexting, and cyberbullying. And according to a Korean survey, children and adolescents who use media for recreational purpose on average more than 3 hours a day trip from 16.1 point before and after Corona pandemic to 36.2%, this kind of trip time. I can show you, I will show you the result of the Korean survey on addictive behaviors during the online learning in school. The total sample size is 400 people. The data collection period is the mid of the Corona pandemic in Korea. The first slide is changes in video use after transition to an online learning. You can find that 65.5% of the students' media usage is increased after transition to online learning. Strongly increased and increased. And grade level has significant effect on internet media use. You can find that 11s and 12s show the internet media uses are increased relatively more, high school student. And about 20% of the student confliction with their parents is increased like this one. And time spent with which kind of the media, you can find that smartphone usage is increased significantly from the more than 2 hours. And all type of media usage time increased significantly, and video watching time is increased mainly from 2 and 3 hours. And this is for the gender discrepancy regarding the time spent with the media. Female students spend significantly more time on smartphone, SN uses, and online shopping than male students. And meanwhile, male students spend significantly more time playing on online game and watching adult content than female students. Online watching adult content like this one, online game. Male is higher than female. And smartphone addiction were measured by structured self-report. After switching to online class, the ratio of both potential and high-risk group for smartphone addiction is increased, like this one. And the level of smartphone addiction among female students is significantly higher than that of male students, female. There's no difference in smartphone addiction rate according to the economic level and grade. So the effect of the pandemic was very general. And this is internet gaming disorder measured by structured self-report questionnaire, and you can find the gender discrepancy. The lower academic group, academic achievement group, this show more the internet gaming is significantly higher than upper academic achievement group. I'm sorry, this is not gender discrepancy, but the academic achievement discrepancy. Yeah, from this slide, I'd like to suggest that how we prevent this kind of increased risk of digital addiction during Corona pandemic. Firstly, I would like to introduce the WHO action or campaign like Healthy at Home. You can find the message or tip from WHO regarding the screen time and video game and social media. And also WHO provides some tip for the parents. So main theme of the message from WHO, we can awareness of the possibility of the increased time of the digital media and the risk of the excessive time of spending digital media. So, and we should monitor and check and the state of the media use among our kids. And also, I would like to suggest that there needed some prerequisite for sustainable untapped society. Untapped and untapped society can increase the risk of addictive use of digital device and contents. Since the untapped society causes anxiety, depression, and stress, and this leads to addiction, measures are needed to reduce these mental health problems. And the development of the current entertainment-oriented untapped platform industry requires a balance. Restriction on excessive gambling and pornographic marketing are needed, and the development of technical measures and programs to prevent the occurrence of hazardous behaviors in digital spaces is necessary. So improving new norm and literacy for healthy use of untapped digital space. And from this slide, I'd like to suggest some more detailed strategy. First one is a mental health promotion strategy, and I can say the here and now base. As a personal, we need to decrease external reward and increase reward from self. And we need a small victory from trivial routines. So then we can increase the positive emotion and decrease negative emotion by focusing on finding positive things in here and now base. And as a family, we can have this situation, opportunity for transition of family relationship from function-oriented to emotion-oriented. The family member can have a role to give emotional reward each other. And also, furthermore, public resources are needed to support this transition of the family function. Okay, this is last slide of my almost the last slide of my presentation. Finally, I would like to suggest some more integrative model strategy based on the public health model. I can say that double triangle model, first triangle and second triangle. You know that a lot of addiction problem is resulted from the interaction between environment and agent and host. Regarding the environmental factor, we needed to suggest that digital and analog balance. We needed to promote physical activity and cultural activity and health leisure activity. And so we needed to establish a safe digital usage environment. And second one is agent aspect. There we needed to balancing consumer advocacy and industry interest. So we needed to monitor the excessive marketing and advertisement, and we needed to support the consumer advocacy, and we needed to have the industry provide the production information objectively. And so we needed to establish the system for monitoring of harmful content. And regarding the host, we can suggest two different aspects. The first one is evidence-based intervention medicine, and second one is a service delivery system. According to the healthy user and hazardous user and additive user, we need some evidence-based medicine like epidemiology survey and surveillance and monitoring system, and research for the risk and protective factors, and this research-based prevention guidance, research-based treatment guideline. And so we need to develop the capacity building for the people who serve as a treatment and intervention field. And also, we can find this kind of the health problem related to the excessive digital use is absolutely mental and behavioral health problem. So we need to provide some service delivery system. Like regarding the primary prevention, we need to campaign and literacy awareness program and preventive education. And for the hazardous user, we needed to set up some screening and early intervention program and counseling program. And in the primary practice, we needed primary care service. And for the more serious case, we needed to set up intensive care system. And also, we needed alternative activity supply system and aftercare management system. Okay, this is my last slide. I'd like to summarize my presentation, the kind of take-home message. Persistent COVID-19 pandemic has a wide and negative impact on mental health, including depression and suicidal action. These effects cause distortion of pleasure-seeking activities, increasing the risk of digital addictive behaviors. This double risk can result in various high-risk behavior in digital among children and adolescents, and depression and suicide in the early young youth generations. The public should support individuals and families to have sufficient resources of pleasure here and now base. And related industries, civil society need to cooperate to advocacy consumer right or digital product. In addition, programs personal and service system should be established to effectively intervene in health problems caused by digital addictive behaviors. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for your attention. This is my last slide. Thank you.
We would like to thank Professor Hai Kukli for his engaging speech. Thank you, Professor, for your valuable contribution and eye-opener presentation.
Yeah, thank you for your attention. It's very honored, and I'm very pleased to participate in this very meaningful symposium. So I can have some question, so I can give some response, my answer.
Yes, yes, and I would like to say welcome again. It's a privilege to see you here. Yes, now I would like to direct some questions from the audience to you. And I just wanted to remind before I start, as you may know, we have just 5 minutes for the Q&A section. So I need briefly answers, please. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Our first question is, one of the survival strategies of people is tend and be friend as well as fight and flight response. How these responses occur or differ in the context of digital addiction and pandemic, you think?
Actually, the 3F, the survival response to stress, is not all harmful, but very helpful. In analog situation, some people respond by freeze or fight and flight, but in the limitation of a physical space, some people who fight, and then as time goes by, the emotion is die down or come down. So sometimes freeze, but sometimes as time goes by, the people became more active. So I can say that in analog space, the survival response is not too much persistent. But in digital space, the characteristics of the digital space is kind of anonymous or very easily accessible and very stay in digital space too much long time. So the people in digital space, they tend to if thinking about, some people use some kind of the fight response, they can be more aggressive fight. And if some people use some kind of flight, they can stay away from the real world too much long time. So I can say that in digital world, this kind of the survival response is too much too much long time. So it's very more harmful to the personal in the digital space. Yeah.
Thank you. And our second question is, how do cultural differences affect the addictive behaviors change during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah. As I talked in my slide, I can say that it's kind of wet culture or dry culture. In Korea, I can say our culture is kind of wet culture. They enjoy very close relationship physically or emotionally. So because when we facing the social distancing, we are very difficulty in adjust this kind of the social distancing because we don't have much resource to personal or familial and community base. But in the dry culture was some kind of individual, focusing the individualism, they have less difficulty to adjust this kind of social distancing. So this kind of the discrepancy also also can be happen in the generation gap. So young generation is a more, they are naturally novelty seeking. So if the quarantine is a persistent long time, and the older generation compared to older generation, the young generation is more reluctant or more difficult to adjust to this kind of strong quarantine. Yeah, I can say.
Mm-hmm. And another one is, since the technology usage is increasing in younger children, how do you think they will be affected in the future? What measures can be taken against possible negative impacts?
Yeah,
I think you mentioned in your presentation, right? Maybe more info you need.
Yeah. Thinking about if our kids are drinking alcohol, we can realize, you drink. But our kids stay more 5 or 6 hours on online game or SNS. It's very difficult to identify he is on the addictive behavior in the online. So I mean that the digital world is very easily accessible. So, but a lot of research show that as well as the substance use disorder, also the online addictive behavior can cause the delayed frontal lobe maturation. In around 15, the adolescent period, the maturation of the frontal lobe is very rapidly conducting. If that period, the pleasure-seeking and rewarding behavior is too much, if too much, the maturation of the frontal lobe is delayed. So this kind of too much rewarding or pleasure-seeking behavior can delay the frontal lobe maturation. So finally, that kids, even though they are getting older and young adults, they show the very strong novelty-seeking tendency like adolescent. So I say that. But we know that the very natural phenomenon, the adolescent, they are basically novelty seeking. So if we absolutely tackle or if we absolutely forbidden that kind of addictive behavior, they can fly this kind of corona black. So we needed to supply a lot of less addictive pleasure resource like after curriculum, sports and cultural or leisure activity. So we needed to support a lot of public or community research to our kids can enjoy safely and can safely pursue the pleasurable activity, I can say.
Yes, I can understand. And you also mentioned that the girls and the women's smartphone usage increased compared to the boys and men. Do you think it is because the boys and men use other technological tools such as gaming consoles?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Gaming, this kind of game, there are a lot of different ways to game, like gaming console, but the goal, they are more pursue the relationship. So I mean that the boy, even though the boy can enjoy game, they can say, I play with friend, but during the game, they just play the game, not with friend. But regarding the goal, they actually, what they want is a relationship like SNS. So that's the reason why this kind of pandemic period, the amount of the smartphone is more huge increasing, not among boys, but among the girl. So the results show that the increased rate of the smartphone is prominent in the girl. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Haykuli, your eye-opener explanation and answers. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good one. After almost 10-12 minutes break, our second speaker, Dr. Daniel King, will be with us with his presentation titled predatory monetization in online games. I hope see you all at 10 a.m. Bye.